What's going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So starting off with data, we do have a couple big ones coming out. Starting off with Monday retail sales. Current forecast is 0.5. This one might be a little bit of a touchy one because I've seen a lot of data recently about consumers, and I think generally a lot of us know that consumers have been struggling. This was posted a couple days back. It shows expectations for personal finances dropped to the most bearish level in history. Of course, a lot of this data could be misconstrued and just portrayed to be bearish, but at the same time, a lot of analysts have been really signaling that a lot of these tariffs are going to really hit consumers hard. So when it comes down to this data, this might spark a little bit of fear in the broader market, potentially. But I think in reality, the biggest data point for this week is going to be on Wednesday. Even though permits starts on Tuesday, last several data points have been absolutely phenomenal, so good stuff for that. No real reason to be in like a concern over, but it is the decision rate on Wednesday. Not because there's going to be any cut, because you can kind of see right here, there's a 98% likelihood of nothing happening. Even moving over to this right here, for the May meeting, you kind of have a 27.7% likelihood of a 25 basis point cut, but still I think Powell will come out and reiterate exactly what he stated roughly a week ago, that the economy is strong and no real reason to cut rates. So I think this might change dramatically come Wednesday and push it back into maybe the July/September for cuts, but what do I know, right? So of course he might reconfirm what he stated, or he could bring up some new fears and spark a little bit of volatility. So let me know your general thoughts on that. There isn't anything planned for SoFi specific this week, so no fireside chats, nothing like that. I was kind of taking a look at a lot of the upcoming conferences, and there's this one this week, so the FinTech Americas, and I think just because of the target audience, SoFi is not participating in this, but even in general, there's a lot of big fintech conferences that, as far as I'm aware, SoFi hasn't really registered for. So hopefully they do, because that would be pretty good. I think overall getting their name out there. A lot of just investors really want to hear exactly what SoFi is doing for the next big innovative step. And I think it is fair to assume it might be like crypto related, but again, what do I know? But aside from that though, the only other piece of news that really came out recently was this. It just came out this morning. So Victory Capital does buy 134,000 shares of SoFi. So big money is taking advantage of these dips, and honestly, as I mentioned, I do feel that there is a lot more upside with SoFi, and most likely even in the short term, it should correct itself back into that $13 to $17 range, and then just for the foreseeable future, just kind of trade within that. But looking forward into this week, going for shorts, 12.2% of the free float is being shorted. Does work out to be 131.54 million shares overall are being shorted. Shorts returned 113,000 shares on Friday. Cost to borrow minimum is back at being positive, so that's always a good thing. But aside from that, just anticipate shorts to be most likely returning some shares up until Wednesday, and then dependent on what is stated, then you could see obviously a lot of volatility associated to that. Looking forward into this week though, with it closing at 12 and change, that does mean that the $12 strike price and below is in the money. So market makers will have to cover that. There was a lot of abnormal transactions that did occur after hours on Friday, so it is fair to assume that potentially they've already started to cover some, but you might see a little bit of a blip as well come Monday. But 12,000 at that $12 strike price, and then 5,000 at the $11.50. And we are getting close to the end of Q1 on a side note, so you should see a lot of abnormal transactions anyways as institutions start to rebalance a lot of their portfolios. So just kind of be aware of that. I'll go over that as well during my weekday videos. But Looking forward into this week, you do have 20,000 at that 10. You have 6,000, or sorry, 8,000 at the 11, 13,000 at that 12, 6,000, 1250, 15,000 at 13, 13,000 at that 1350. So it's a monthly chain, very active. So if SoFi does have a pretty kick-ass week and really appreciates based on the stock price, then you could see a lot of activity, and potentially even if it does get above this 15 for whatever reason, then you could see kind of gamma squeeze territory. But yeah, let me know your general thoughts on that. But going into this week though, with it at 1209, it is trading between this pivot and this S1, so 1192 followed by 1119 is going to be the kind of support levels. Just watch for that. 1310 and 1428 will be the next strong target / resistance points. So if you're looking at potentially averaging down, just kind of take note of some of these. But as I've mentioned, I do feel that this week you should see a nice push higher to that $13 to $17 range, and that's ultimately the next strong target based on the fib levels. Looking for this though, on the actual chart itself, it did close above that ALMA, so essentially the next big real kind of target for this is 1445, and that is that 100-day moving average. So SoFi has a pretty big gap that it could really go up, so just kind of take note of that. So you have that $13 one right here, so 1310, and then 1428 followed by this right here of 1445. So like I said, I think there's a lot more upside for SoFi. Just last little bit was absolutely crazy. A lot of market volatility that really took it down a little bit lower than I think a lot of people did originally forecast, but luckily enough, that 200-day moving average, it did bounce off of that, and in theory should really push SoFi higher. Again, it's going to come down to the data points, what Powell says and everything, but I think he has been very cautious about what he's been stating, but at the same time, he is following the data, and CPI, even PPI last week were on point. Michigan consumer sentiment, not all that great. So it's been, I think, the third negative report from that, but I think overall the market is ready to really move higher. So let me know your general thoughts on SoFi. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? Where do you see things going? So throw your price predictions in the comments below. In my opinion, like I said, I think it should be between these 2 points, most likely come at least Friday, between this R1 and the pivot. Of course, depending on what data, it could be a little bit higher or potentially stay within this range, but I don't really see that much downside at this level. So again, I could be wrong. You do whatever floats your boat. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend thus far. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon. I give buy signals on stocks, options, and crypto. Many of them have been absolutely on point and bangers. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.